Well, I'm gonna shift over to your work now. How do you think your work responds to the local context here?
Directly. I think it's, I'd like to think, of course, whenever one's commenting on their work, you know, it's very personal. But I think it's grounded in the region, that it is a regional architecture. The architecture that I designed for the Sonoran Desert is Sonoran Desert architecture. The architecture I designed for Kobe, Japan is that region, et cetera, et cetera. I never want to be known as, you know, a desert architect, although I feel I'm probably an expert in desert architecture because of, just simply because I've had more experience there. Also, as I get older, I recognize and appreciate the connection back to history. Contemporary architecture is, I think, at its best when it interprets, you know, what has gone before, interprets the forces of the climate, of the site, of the people that first inhabited it, and it's really it's a romantic notion, but it's also a very prudent notion too. When the you know, Native Americans that lived here before we did, they knew how to live in the desert.
Right.
Now we would be crazy if we didn't study that and understand, you know, how they did that passively. I'm not an architect that will emulate history. I'm not interested in that, but I am very interested in understanding it to the point that I can make it part of this century, and just use a different voice. But as I travel, and I'm very fortunate to travel all over the world, the ancient architecture that I see and experience, I mean, it just, it gets right under my skin, and I absolutely love it. And I'm longing to find a project where I can work with a very old building. I don't, you know, Phoenix doesn't have very old buildings, but I'll take anything I can get.
Yes.
But to work with an ancient castle, you know, in London, and respect it for what it is, and then insert a modernism and a new purpose, utilizing the moss and the stains on the stone. I think that it's just a beautiful, it's probably my number one anticipated project is to get to do that. You know, Carlos Scarpa did it all the time in Italy, and that's where I learned the power of that juxtaposition. You know, one is good and the other one's good, but together they're very powerful.
Right, indeed. Neat. You talked about the ancient architecture and the Indians and how they used to live in the desert. So how do you incorporate sustainability into your projects?
It's embedded. It's. I'll speak for all of Jones Studio. We see it as an ethical responsibility. We've always felt it was an ethical responsibility, even before it was identified as a sustainable architecture. And I can look back to my early heroes, and there's a reason buildings become timeless. They're appropriate regardless of what year it is. They continue to be appropriate over centuries when they respect orientation, respect technology, and respect people, and give more than they take. And it's possible for architecture to do that, just as possible for people to do that in entire societies.